Director Sam Mendes, who you may best know from films such as Skyfall, American Beauty, and 1917, has confirmed his cast for the upcoming Beatles biopic, though we are not just getting one movie covering the iconic band, but four. The cast that has been confirmed includes Harris Dickinson as John Lennon, Paul Mescal as Paul McCartney, Barry Keoghan as Ringo Starr, and Joseph Quinn as George Harrison. These actors have been rumoured for these roles for quite some time, and it has now been confirmed at CinemaCon. The logline for the film is as follows: each man has his own story, but together they are legendary. So the vision of this came from Sam Mendes reportedly wanting to do a mini-series covering the Beatles, and had worked on that project for a long time. However, he wanted to do a film instead, but understanding that a film wouldn't do the four band members justice. So there's a unique take of doing four movies, one following each of the individual members of the band. Mendes is stating that this collection of films is called The Beatles, a four-film cinematic event, and each of the films will simply be titled the first name of each of the band members: John, Paul, Ringo, and George. And I quite like this idea of having a cinematic event, as we need some way to reinvigorate the interest in cinema. I'm not sure how the release schedule for these films is going to work. It appears that they're all being released in April 2028, and I imagine they could be released all at the same time, although I feel like that would do harm to the overall box office. It's likely they will be released 1 week at a time for you to be able to go and see a new one each week. I do really like this idea of having a film following each of the individual members, having them as the main character in their own story, but then playing supporting roles in the other films. I think that's quite a cool idea, and something films should aspire to do, to just kind of make a fun spin on what cinema can do. I can see people stating this is just an attempt to do a cash grab, for example, because you're going to have four films instead of just one. But to be honest, I could see maybe these films being so different that they're going to offer the audience something completely different. And I'm sure there's going to be a disparity in the box office for these films. I feel like Paul and John are the mainstream Beatles, and they seem to get a lot of the credit for the success of the band, and people may be more willing to go see those films. Although out of the array of actors that are playing these roles, I think Joseph Quinn is the best of the bunch, and George Harrison is seemingly the most underrated Beatle and should probably be up there, but everyone just talks about Paul or John most of the time. And at this time, I'm unsure if they're going to tell the same events from the perspective of each of the main characters of their own story, or is the biopic of each one going to focus solely on them? Are we going to see scenes from a different character's perspective across all of them, or are we going to substantially follow each main character in their respective films and then just have the others appear sparingly or as much as they can as a supporting cast member? So I'm very curious to see how that pans out. Mendes has said we need big cinematic events to get people out of the house, and this is something I could see working well to some extent, although this could backfire. I feel there is a lack of interest in going to the cinema amongst a lot of people since streaming came about. And there could be some fault in the audience for that, but it's just the way we take in films from now on. People would rather just sit at home, pay for a subscription service, than pay to go to the cinema. But to be honest, I feel like going to the cinema is still worth it. And if I could see a film that is a unique experience and worth going to see at the cinema rather than just watching it on the television, I will bother to go out and see it. And anyway, people should go and see different types of films, something they wouldn't usually watch, in order to just help support this industry. And overall, I don't think streaming is it's bad for the cinema going experience, but it's not necessarily bad for films. But if this is being pitched as a way to sort of save cinema, I give them full credit for trying. And maybe this could work out really well for Sony and Sam Mendes, and this could like inspire a new type of roadshow cinema that we've had in the past. And I would like to see that come back to some extent. And this could be the start of it, or maybe give a spark to what we could get in the future. And the fact that this film is following the Beatles, one of the biggest bands to have ever lived, and, they have popularity amongst older generations and younger generations are into them. And then people who are just interested in films might be intrigued by going to see a film that tells the story of the Beatles. Biopics aren't always appealing to audiences, but we've seen other successes with musical icons like Austin Butler playing Elvis in a biopic, and, the Beatles haven't had a biopic, and this is the first film that has seemingly been granted the license to use all of the Beatles songs, so that would get people very excited. And I do feel that Sam Mendes is a very competent filmmaker, and he clearly has a lot of passion behind this project and a clear vision for what these 4 films are going to be. And I'm curious to see in 3 years' time if it pays off and these movies are a success. I'm not sure that they will bomb per se, but as I said earlier, I feel like there could be a significant interest in maybe 1 or 2 of the films and not so much of the others. But if this is marketed in the right way and people actually bother to go to the cinema maybe each week to see these films, it could be a really interesting time for cinema going forward, as I've said, and I'm keen to see what will happen. Principal photography on the movie is reportedly set to take over a year, as it's going to be 4 movies rather than just 1, so that seems like a reasonable amount of time to create this film event and have the 4 films, and then properly work on it, edit it for a 2028 release. And I assume that because they're making 4 movies rather than just 1, the budget is going to be that of 4 movies. I don't really know how much they would spend on a biopic about the Beatles with each of these actors, but I could see them maybe doing 80 to 100 million per film. And then if each film is able to make a return of 200 to 300 million, it could be decent for Sony and a good experiment to see how we can shape these types of films going forward. Not necessarily just having different perspective for band biopics, for example, but it might be an interesting way to tell multiple stories over different perspectives of characters. So I'm intrigued to see how it plays out and whether or not this will pay off for Sony. But what do you think about these Beatles biopics? Do you feel like you'll be more interested in a certain Beatles member, or will you be willing to commit to see each of these 4 movies to learn about this conclusive story that Sam Mendes is hoping to tell? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and make sure to click the bell icon to receive notifications for all of my future videos. That's it for now, thanks for tuning in.